Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin Towers. I'm representing the sport baseball. Why baseball? I picked baseball because ever since I was a little kid, I would go to baseball games. I've been to the Detroit Tigers games, the Toronto Blue Jays, and often when they verse each other, either in the US or in Canada. And even when I was in high school, I always go to games with my family in the summer, and we made it a tradition. But even though I have seen the baseball games firsthand, in person, or on TV, I do not know all the rules. So I thought with this opportunity for the project that I can have the chance to learn a sport that I really do like. What is baseball? Baseball is a game played with a ball and bat, played by two teams of having each 9 players. The 9 players have each have their own position, which is the first baseman, second baseman, third, catcher, first baseman, and then we have 3 players in the outfield, which is the right, left, and center, and then we have the shortstop. The shortstop positions himself between the third and second baseman, and the shortstop's basic duty is to be the captain of the infield, and he takes charge of the ball, and as well making sure there's communications with the infielders, which is basically like someone gets the ball, throwing it to the first baseman, and if they're coming back, just so that we can take out that team member. And this is usually when these positions are held when they are on defense mode. So this is baseball typically takes place on a large field with 4 bases laid out in a diamond shape, and each space is 90 feet apart. And the outfield regulations for the Major League Baseball is 400 feet. Typically, each game has 9 innings, which is each inning both teams battle against each other and taking turns being offense and defense. Innings end once both teams strike out 3 times, each on their turn as offense. Baseball basics. The main objective is to score more runs than their team. To play a run, the player must run around the diamond, touching all 4 bases in order of first, second, third, and home. Before the opposite team can catch the ball and throw it to the base that the batter is running to. If the player is on each base, this means bases are loaded, and basically bases loaded means every time a hitter successfully hits the ball and has ability to run to first base, then automatically the player on third base will make it home. So it's a triple effect, which will keep on happening until someone strikes out or is stopped by the opposing team. The batter has 3 strikes before going out, but they also have chances of fouls, so the batter can leave the ball after 4 balls missed from the strike zone. So this is once you hit 4 misses, then you have what's called a walk to first base. So if they don't hit the ball or make any movement to make the idea of hitting the ball, then it's considered a miss, as long as it's not in the ability to that the umpire, which is the referee, thinks that they could have hit the ball, and then they are automatically moved to first base. And some rules, they will intentionally decide, the opposing team will intentionally decide to give their opposing team a intentional walk, which means that the pitcher would intentionally throw the ball so that it couldn't hit them. And this is done statistically if the person is a good hitter, which would, if they're a good enough hitter, then they will automatically get a home run. So this kind of puts off the score, and then they actually have a way to run around. And that could be like potentially the next person behind them is a worse hitter, so they can end up being on the base for the whole game, for the whole round. And this is usually done for talks between the manager that's in the dugout and the pitcher. And a little bit of history of baseball. So the funny thing about history is no one it's so long ago, not a lot of people know the exact facts. So sometimes there is mixed facts depending on the websites you look at. So this is one of the myths. This is the invention of baseball. So in the summer of 1839, Cooperstown, New York, legend says Abner Doubleday invented the game. He was a Civil War hero, and baseball became Americans' favorite pastime that we all know now. But in 1903, Henry Chadwick published an article about how baseball origins from the game Rounders, which he recalled playing when he was a young schoolboy in Britain. Well, the executive of baseball did not like that idea because baseball was an American game, created on American soil, and so him and several executives, and like a couple years later, decided that they're going to make Abernathy Doubleday the founder, and which is kind of a shock because by the time that decision was made, Doubleday was been dead for 15 years, so it's basically their word against what, and there's no one to oppose that idea because the man that they're saying is from is long dead. And this is all based off of one man's story, which it was a coal miner and engineer, and this is when he was. So he told them, "I saw this guy created it," and no more witnesses. They're like, "Okay, he created it," just so then they could say America created the sport. So the real origin is even though it's uncertain because there's different articles saying that, well, Doubleday made it in 1839, well, we were playing baseball a couple years before that. So it all depends on who says it and where it says it. But like the real origin is that even in ancient Egypt, the Egyptians played games that are similar to baseball, involving hitting balls with bats. It originated from cricket, so did rounder, coincidentally, and it became popular in America in the 19th century. The first baseball team is the New York Knickerbockers, and which was actually from 1845, although that is something speculated. This is maybe the first organized team, but the Knickerbockers came actually from a different team called the New York Gotham that was created before that, and it was just a split up team. The first baseball game was the Knickerbockers versus New York Nine, which could have been also New York Multiple or New York Gotham, depending on the site you look. But coincidentally, no matter where he says, the New York Nine creamed the Knickerbockers 23-1, which is sad. Most of the rules that we find now, was originated from the Knickerbockers rules, so that's where we get that they're the first team. And with the New York game, the first game ever played, it was always in the new 14-inning game in the New Jersey Esalen Field. So the creation of professional baseball. So in 1857, they formed the National Association Baseball Players. Double B is because back then they split baseball into two different words, and this was for the amateur baseball players, which is why I put in quotations, because even though it's amateur, the difference between amateur and professional is payment. So back then, even though they were all amateur players, some people were getting paid for playing baseball, which was why they split up in 1869, where baseball clubs could declare themselves professionals. In 1870, the NABBP split into two groups, which is Amateur League and the National Associations of Professional Baseball. And that name only lasted to 75, because in 76, the National League was created. And this also moved the movement that they decided, the people that was in charge of baseball for these groups decided that non-white players were excluded from the professional game, and this didn't change till 1947 with Jackie Robinson. In the West, the American League arose, sinking the major league status in 1894, and in 1903, the first World Series game in MLB
between the Boston Americans and the American League and the Pittsburgh Pirates in the National League. And the Boston Americans won the game. And that was all American history that I just covered. This is a little bit about the Canadian baseball history. So in 1877, the London Tecumsehs were denied from the National League. They were our first baseball league that wanted the national status, although they were denied because in order to play in the National League, you couldn't play exhibition games with local teams in your area. And London Tecumsehs did not like the idea, so ultimately they were denied from the National League. But in 1967, we had the Montreal Expos, which was the first Canadian team to join the National League. Although they moved to Washington, D.C. in 2004, in 1977, we have the creation of the Toronto Blue Jays that joined the American League, and they are still playing baseball to this day. And in 2003, the creation and a failed attempt on our Canadian baseball team, which is basically when we were trying to make our own pro ball. So worldwide, baseball is popular, especially in Asia and Latin America. Japan was the largest pro baseball league after the U.S., and it has a significant impact on pop culture. A little bit of equipment. So our first equipment that we need is our batting helmet, and this is used by the player to protect their ears, and most common you will see protectors on both ears to accommodate for both left and right people. Then we have our baseball cap, which protects the players from the sun in their face when they're playing the game. And then we have our catcher's helmet. Our catcher's helmet protects the catcher's head from the ball, and usually you will see the two pieces are detached, so sometimes you could have to get the helmet and then you have to buy the cage separately. And then we have our uniforms. So a little bit of our uniforms is typically in baseball we have 3 uniforms. We have our home team, our home game, away game, and an alternative. So find the picture displayed on the screen, you see that our home game is the white one, which just has a logo on it. But if we're playing away, we want to show off where we are completely or what our thing is. So we'll get like Detroit or Tigers. And then our alternative is just different uniforms that you can potentially wear. So sometimes teams will have maybe 3 to 5 alternative uniforms, which is actually a lot. The only 2 people that are exceptions of this is the Detroit Tigers and the New York Yankees, and they are the only 2 that do not actually have an alternative, and it's just their home and away game. And then we have our sliding shorts. These are padded shorts to protect players' thighs, and while they are sliding into the bases, because when you're hitting that ground trying to get those bases, it's a little hard. Our next one is our baseball cleats. These are a little bit different, as our baseball cleats are spiked, and they're either made out of rubber, sometimes plastic, or metal, and it gives players traction on the ground. So our next equipment is the bat. The bat can be either made out of wood or hollow aluminum, and if it's made out of wood, it's typically made out of ash wood. Sometimes there is different alternatives. And then we have our ball, which is woolen, and it's yarn wrapped around a cork spear, enclosed in leather cloak, and you usually see it stitched with red string onto our baseball mittens. So we have 3 different baseball mittens. So we have our first baseman's mitt, and there we would have it's longer and wider than you will see for a standard field person's mitt. It's similar to the catcher's mitt where 4 of the fingers are connected, and then it's rounded and has a little bit more padding. And the same similar thing for our catcher's mitt is connected by the finger pockets, and
and it's much wider and padded. And you can see that, like, when you look at the gloves, it depending on how the mitt is, they do have like that extra little like pleated thing between the thumb and the four fingers. And the main difference between the catchers and first baseman is the catchers is a lot more rounded. Kind of looks like a scoop. And then for a regular glove, and that's for all the regular player, all the rest of the players. And this is just to protect their palms. It has a webbed pocket in between the thumb and the first finger. And each finger is separated inside the glove. And then we have our batting gloves, which is just for when you're out on bat. It helps gives additional grip when holding the bat. Okay, so our national governing bodies. So we have in Canada is for the amateur baseball is Baseball Canada, and then it branches off that each 10 provinces has their own little association. So ours in Ontario is Baseball Ontario, and the U.S. our amateur baseball, it's the U.S. Baseball, and then we have our Major League Baseball, which is for the professional balls. And then Major League is split into two different associations, which is our National League and American League. And each of them have their own little are split into three sectors, which is Central, East, and West for both. And in total, there is 30 baseball teams in the professional baseball. And international, we have the Baseball Softball Confederation, which is WBSC, and from a division of that is the International Baseball Federation, which was originally a standalone, but they decided to converge with the International Softball Association. So competitions in the world. We have the National, which is the World Series or the Fall Classic, and this is national in America. So we're the champion of the American League, and National League winners will compete for the title. In international, we have our Caribbean Series, which consists of the Latin American countries. So that includes Cuba, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Venezuela. And our next one is the World Baseball Classic, which is the classic where all the world teams play against each other. This started in 2006 and happens every 4 years. Our past competitions, we have the Olympics. So we actually baseball actually was in the Olympics from 1992 to 2008. And then it was confirmed to come back in 2020 games because it was because it was held in Tokyo. And that was one of the big, and as I said earlier, Japan is the second largest country to have a pro baseball team. And so they would obviously want it back, although with the 2020 games being canceled, we're not sure if they're going to be coming back for the Paris games. So, and then our last one is the Baseball World Cup. This is also has ended. So it started in 1938, and they decided in 2001 that they will have the games every 2 years, and that was until 2011. And ultimately, they canceled in 2011 because it was competing with the World Baseball Classic, so they ended the older one instead. So a little bit of our greatest of all time. So we have our third one, which is Barry Bonds. He was active in 1986 to 2007. He was played for the Pirates and the Giants. And he had a record of having 73 home runs in a single season, a record of 232 walks in a single season, and 120 were intentional. He held the most career runs of 762, 8 Golden Gloves, 7 MVPs, but he is not a Hall of Famer, even though he has all these records, due to him being accused of using professional enhancement drugs. So because of that, it can't take the records away, but may not give him any more. And with that being said, he only has 2 more years after 2020 to be allowed to be on the ballot for the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So he most likely will not be a Hall of Famer, even though he has all these records broken. So our second one is Willie Mays. He was active in 1951 to 1973. He was a player of the Giants and the Mets, and he was considered the greatest baseball player after Babe Ruth. And he had 12 consecutive Golden Gloves, which is pretty good because in 1957, that's when the Golden Gloves came out as rewards, and he was one of the first players to get one of those awards. So after 12 years of that, that's pretty good. They basically made the Gold Glove for him. And then he has 2 MVP awards. He played 24 All-Star games, and his team won 2 of them. And then, of course, our number 1 greatest of all time is Babe Ruth. He was active in 1914 to 1935. His original name was George Herman Ruth, but because he was a minor when he was first originally signed, he actually the owner took guardianship of him, so that was the name that he got stuck with, that he's Babe of the owner. And this was the owner of the Red Sox, which was his first team. He also was players for the Yankees and the Braves. He did most of his record breaking in the Yankees. So he has 714 home runs, 220-win seasons. During this time with the Red Sox, he won 3 World Series, and then he was sold to the Yankees right afterwards. So there was a curse associated with him, which is called the Curse of the Bambino, which basically from when he was sold to 2004, the Red Sox did not go to any World Series, so they kind of associated it that it's bad luck to sell Babe Ruth, especially after he left the Red Sox. He did so many record breakings. So he currently holds the record score at 177 of runs. In 1927, he set the record for the most home runs in a single season and hold it for 34 years, which was a total of 60. And originally the one before that he beat was 59, which was actually from himself. And he's a part of the first group to electees in the Hall of Fame. So here's a couple honorable mentionables. The greatest of all time honorable mentions. I threw in Jackie Robinson just because he was a big historical figure, even though maybe he doesn't have as much records. When you think of baseball, when we were separated, he was the one that broke the segregation. And thank you for listening.